Hi, I'm Scott Campbell with Solve 3D.
And I'm Brad Ashley. Welcome to video 2. In this video, we'll be going through the labeling of your data using those orthomosaics.
Yeah, there's a number of really important things to think about as people start to get ready to train their model. Brad, so maybe we should cover off what those important things are.
Some of the important items are thinking about what type of data you're using. In this case, we're going to be using an orthomosaic that was collected. Think about the resolution, think about the size, all those sorts of things. And then as well, think about whether the actual piece of the data that you're using for training has enough examples of the item of interest. We're going to show you some examples of what could work and what won't work based on our experience. Also, you want to think about how many classes you want to label at one time. If you're interested specifically in cars, are you going to create a model specifically for that? Or do you want to do cars, parking, markers, etc., all in one model? And then the last piece that's important to think about is the whether the data is too large and for what you're trying to label.
Okay, Kevin, let's get into step one, which is labeling of the training data. Take us through how you go about loading up the data and then labeling it before you do the training of the model.
Sure. So let's take a quick look at the workshop data here. We have a few folders. We're going to be concentrating on the training data folder here and the labels. And you can always look at our results later if you want to see these, but we're going to be using the training data and the training labels to create a model inside the My Results folder and train up run the detection on our image and see what the kind of results that we get. So first, we're going to add our image tile or orthomosaic to the solved engine viewer. We're just going to click and drag it. That's one way of adding it. Alternatively, you can always click add item and add an orthomosaic and select it that way. So I've added it here. You notice it's probably in the wrong place in the world. We haven't defined any projection yet, so we need to change the projection. So we go to edit, the top left here, and we click, I know this is in the UTM-12 projection, so we select our projection here under data projection, hit update project. If your projection is not in this list, you can always go to tools, projection manager, and you can add it into this list here, and then it'll appear in the under the pencil here. So now that we've defined it, you can see now that it's in the correct place in the world. So we're going to concentrate on this little bit area here. So to open the aerial classification setting, you go to Tools, Aerial Classification, and a little window pops up. So the first things you weren't going to want to do, say we're interested in try to find all of these cars and maybe these handicaps paint markings. We're going to start by defining a training area that we're interested in. So this image is, if I zoom out, this image is rather large. There's cars all over the place. We don't want to go through and label all of these. So that's what we'll let the machine learning do. So we're going to just concentrate on this one parking lot to give it some examples for training. So I'm going to click the enable training button, and it's popped open a training areas thing here. You can define as many training areas as you want, but I'm going to add a new one by clicking add new training area. I'm going to now draw kind of weird looking box around this parking lot. Maybe I'll just go right here. And this is going to tell the algorithm that only look in this area for examples of cars. So now I'm going to click add class and give it a new class name, cars. And I'm going to add a second class called handicap. So we'll look at cars first. So to define a label around a car, you just click this plus button, add new label. And then you can zoom in here with your mouse wheel, and you start by drawing little boxes around each car. You can always hit the space bar.
I noticed when you drew that label, you're leaving a little bit around the edge of the vehicle. I'm assuming that's intentional.
It can be. It really depends on the object you're trying to find. The algorithm does like to learn off some context around the object that you're defining. So, if you have a vehicle on some grassy surface or on a pavement, it will learn those differences and be able to identify both. If you're doing things like maybe building footprints and you want to, define an exact boundary around that building, you might want to be a little more closer to that building and be a little more exact. So for the purposes of cars, it doesn't really matter.
So, like many things in machine learning, deep learning the answer is it depends.
That's right. Yeah. So I'll just do a couple here and then I can import a file that I've done later, but let's just show you the handicap ones. We're going to scroll down here, click add plus for the handicap and start clicking a little square around those guys too.
Now, I see you've got little handles on these labels. I'm assuming that when I go to check my work, I can adjust the label. I can
That's
make
right.
it bigger or smaller.
You can always right click on any of these and go edit label or delete it if you want to start over again. Edit label will just let you insert a vertex in here, and then you can start by hovering over on it and dragging it wherever you need to adjust your polygon. So just for the purposes of saving time right now, I'm going to delete all of these and import one that I've done previously. So I'll just delete all of these, and I'm going to go to the import labels button. And within the workshop, we provide you under training labels, one called training cars paint markings. So this is one I did before. And you see I have car and handicap classes that I was previously defining. And if we click, we can just leave these on the default. We just hit import data. You see now it's imported in with our car and handicap. And if I zoom out, I have my training area. It's of that kind of similar parking lot area that I was defining, and all my cars and handicap spots are labeled.
So just a quick clarification on the training area. You could go through and label all the vehicles in the entire image if that's what you wanted to do because it gave you better results. But if you feel that you don't need to, you can select a smaller area, and that's the purpose of the training area, right?
That's right, yeah. It could be tedious to do the entire image. So.
Yeah.
So once you're happy with the training area, and at any point, I recommend you can always export your labels during the process if you want to save them or don't want to lose them. You can always export them by using the export labels function and export them as a 3DL file, which you can re-import again like I just did. But that's always a good tip if you're working through a lot of them. You want to make sure you don't lose something. Export them frequently.
Here are a couple of key points to keep in mind. First, you need to pick the right amount of good representative data. Now, this is a bit of a Goldilocks, right? Because it's going to depend upon the objects you're looking for and the data that you have. But basically, if you pick objects that are too small in number or too small in size relative to the overall image, you could end up with very poor results. Also, when you go to label or identify the objects in your training data, you need to identify them all, because if you don't, and you miss quite a few of them, then those objects, which are good objects, end up being part of the bad data set, the so-called bad data set. And so the model will see them and think that, yes, okay, well, this is something that's not your object, and you're going to get poor results as well. This is where the training area feature really comes in, because you can reduce the size of the image. It saves you time, and it can also improve your results by using that feature. Finally, you should include just a little bit of the image around an example object, and this will help give your model some context for the object that you're looking for.